A warm good morning to all my dear students. Today we'll be discussing the chapter 6, that is endodontic surgery. Okay, so endodontic surgery, this will be covering all the minor surgical procedures, what all we can do, why there is a need for this endodontic surgery, and what is the indications, contraindications, basic flap designs and incisions. All those things will be covered under this chapter. So let's begin with it. Beginning with the introduction, endodontic surgery is defined as the removal of tissues other than the contents of the root canal to retain a tooth with pulpal or periapical involvement. So, in cases of pulpal or periapical involvement, that is any diseases, in those cases, the removal of tissues other than the contents of the root canal, okay, that is done to retain the tooth. Okay, so in disease cases, to remove the tissues other than the root canal contents and to maintain the tooth within the oral cavity, the treatment option is endodontic surgery. So you can see in the picture that these are the options, or these are the procedure wise, where you can see in the periapical there is a lesion found. Okay, so in the periapical region there is a lesion, so removal of that inflamed tissue is done, and then the root end filling is done to the RCT treated tooth, and then suture is been placed. So later on the bone will be healed and the tooth will be maintained in the space with the function, proper function, and maintenance of the teeth will be in the arch. So that is why we need the endodontic surgery. The objectives of this procedure, that is endodontic surgery, has certain objectives. The main and important objective is to provide fluid tight seal at the apical end by retrograde preparation and obturation. This has been asked many times in the MCQs, to provide fluid tight seal at the apical end by the retrograde preparation. And the other objectives are removal of the diseased periapical tissue like granuloma, cyst, overfilled material, etc. Root inspection for knowing the etiology of endodontic failure, fracture, accessory canals, etc. And one more thing is to eliminate the apical ramifications by root resection, so as to completely remove the cause of failure of the endodontic treatment. So mostly with a tooth which has all the periapical or pulpal involvement cases with some disease conditions, in those conditions we are aiming for the endodontic surgery, which will aid us in the removal of the diseased periapical tissue, root inspection, fluid tight seal, and to eliminate the apical ramifications by the root resections. So these are the objectives. Indications, when all we need the endodontic surgery. The main three indications are: one is need for surgical drainage, second one is failed non-surgical endodontic treatment, third one is any procedural errors such as instrument separation, root perforation, symptomatic overfilling. These are the important indications. The other indications under failed non-surgical endodontic procedure, that is endodontic treatment which is failed, in that cases irretrievable root canal filling material will be there, irretrievable intraradicular post is there, continuous post-operative discomfort is there, recurring exacerbations of non-surgical endodontic treatment is there. And third one is calcific metamorphosis of the pulp space. Fourth one is horizontal fracture at the root tip with associated periodontal periapical diseases. And I already mentioned the fifth one is procedural errors. So the main indications are need for surgical drainage, failed non-surgical endodontic treatment, and procedural error cases, that is instrument separation, root perforation, as well as symptomatic overfillings. In those cases the indication of surgical treatment, that is very important. The other similar types of indications are anatomic variations. As you can see in the picture, the variations in the root morphology and anatomy, that is root dilacerations, apical root fenestrations, non-negotiable root curvatures. These are the anatomic variations what you can expect there, which requires the endodontic surgeries. Iatrogenic errors, biopsy, corrective surgery, replacement surgery, and implant surgery. All these requires endodontic surgeries. Apart from indications, there are certain contraindications where we are not supposed to proceed with the endodontic surgeries. The main contraindication is inadequate periodontal support and active uncontrollable periodontal disease. So in that cases, that is where there is periodontal support is not there and where there is active uncontrollable periodontal disease, in that case it is an absolute contraindication for the surgery. And the other contraindications are poor restorability with post-endodontic restoration, lesion which is situated very close to important anatomical structures such as lingual nerve, infraalveolar nerve, mental nerve, and foramens. Okay, and the other complications or contraindications are systemic complications, which is bleeding disorder, immunocompromised patient, severe heart disease such as myocardial infarction. So these are the main contraindications. Main contraindication is the one which has the first and most importance, that is inadequate periodontal support and active aggressive, uncontrollable periodontal disease. Please remember these words. Before we move on to the endodontic surgery part, before that we have to have some investigations, okay, that are mandatory investigations prior to the surgery. So we have to check the patient's clotting time, bleeding time, prothrombin time, thrombin time, partial thromboplastin time, as well as activated thromboplastin time. So all these BT, CT, PTT, PT, all those things should be taken and investigated prior to the surgery to check with the clotting and the bleeding. Okay, so before we consider any surgery, all these things are very mandatory. Once we decide to move on to the surgery part, the steps involved in endodontic surgery is very important. Okay, what are the steps which through which we can follow for the endodontic surgery? The steps involved are: first, the case diagnosis, then preoperative surgical note should be written down, anesthesia or hemostasis should be obtained, then management of soft and hard tissues are done with surgical access or osteotomy. Periradicular curettage is done, after which access to the root structure is obtained and root and preparation is done. Okay, after the root and preparation, root and resection is done. Following that, root and preparation can be done again and root and filling can be done. Okay, so after the root and filling, the soft tissue repositioning and suturing is done and the post surgical care is to be taken care. So these are the steps involved in the endodontic surgery. To perform any kind of surgery, the main important aspect is the design of the incision and flap. Okay, so how and where we have to produce any incisions, as well as how the flap design should be and how we are reflecting the flap. That is an important concept. Now, good surgical access is fundamentally dependent on the appropriate flap designs. So flap designs are very important because it provides us good surgical access. So the classification of flap designs are two. That is full mucoperiosteal flap and limited mucoperiosteal flaps. Okay, these are the two different classifications or two different steps or two different types of flaps, that is full mucoperiosteal flap and limited mucoperiosteal flap. In full mucoperiosteal flap, there are mainly four flap designs, okay, flap designs, and in limited mucoperiosteal flaps there are two designs. Now in the full mucoperiosteal flap designs, these are triangular, rectangular, trapezoidal and horizontal. Okay, these are the four one. Triangular means single vertical releasing incision will be given. In rectangular there will be double vertical releasing incision. In trapezoidal there will be broad based rectangular one, and in horizontal there will be no vertical releasing incision. So this is based on the vertical releasing incisions. There are triangular, rectangular, trapezoidal and horizontal. Now in the limited mucoperiosteal flap there are two types, as I have already mentioned. Those are submarginal curved one and submarginal scalloped rectangular one. Okay, submarginal curved one, that is semi-lunar shape. Submarginal scalloped rectangular one, that is called as Lübke ocean bean flap. So these are the flap designs. To know all the details about flap designs and the incisions, before that we have to know basic principles of an incision in the oral surgery. What all the principles behind an incision placement, that we have to know. First one is use new sterilized blade. Okay, that is mainly number 15 blade is used. You can see in the picture, that is number 15 blade. Scalpel is grasped in pen grasp. Okay, grasping should be always in a pen grasp for maximum control and tactile sensitivity. The incision that should be made at right angle to the underlying bone. Okay, incision should be always made at the right angle to the underlying bone, and the scalpel should be moved in single constant firm movement. Okay, the movement should be single constant and firm movement. Okay, so these are the points you should remember, which is blade number is 15, pen grasp should be holded, incision at right angle to the underlying bone, and scalpel should move in a single constant firm movement. Other principles are, you have to avoid the anatomical structures. The base will be always wider than the apex. Okay, base would be wider. Adequate width for maximum visualization should be obtained. Adequate width for maximum visualization. The flap should be wider than anticipated bony defect. Okay, should be wider than the bony defect. Delicate handling of the flap without any tension should be there. Okay, without any tension, there should not be any tension. Now the important point is that vertical releasing incision should start at buccal vestibule and end at the interdental papilla, not at the buccal or labial surface. Okay, that is an important point. So vertical releasing incision, where it should be, it should start at buccal vestibule and end at the interdental papilla, not anywhere else. Okay, so the points to be remembered are: base should be wider, adequate width should be there for the visualization, flap should be wider than the anticipated bony defect, the delicate handling should be done without tension, and vertical releasing incision should start at vertical buccal vestibule and end at the interdental papilla. After the incision principles, there are certain principles and guidelines for the flap design also. Okay, so these are the main points that includes 5 main points. Okay, so first point is that there should be wide flap base. Okay, so always the flap should be taken with wide base for adequate blood supply and healing or increased healing. Okay, so wide flap base, the base of the flap should be always wide. Now the second point is incision should be over healthy solid bone. Okay, so whenever there is a disease, we should not cut through the bone. Wherever the incision should not be over the overlying surface where the bone lesion is. Okay, so it should be always on a healthy solid bone. Avoid incision over the bony defect or periapical lesions. Third point is that width of the flap must include at least one tooth on either side of the surgical site. Okay, so whenever we are fixing a surgical site, on either side of that at least one teeth should be included for the width of the flap. Now fourth one is never incise through the interdental papilla. Okay, through the interdental papilla we are supposed to incise, either include or extrude the interdental papilla. Now fifth one is avoid horizontal and severely angled vertical incisions. Okay, so always severely angled vertical incision as well as horizontal incisions should be avoided. Okay, whenever possible, avoid those things. Why we are avoiding all those things? In the first picture it is shown that the vertically running blood vessels you can see there. So whenever we are cutting it in a vertical or angulated manner, we can cut so many blood vessels. So to avoid that, we have to cut, always preferably cut vertically. There are certain sites where we have to place or avoid the vertical releasing incision. Okay, so sites where vertical releasing incision is contraindicated, where we should never have the vertical releasing incision, those are transverse incision in palate, lingual incision of the mandible, canine eminences, and between the lower premolars. These are the 4 sites where the vertical releasing incision is always contraindicated. So transverse incision in palate, lingual incision of the mandible, canine eminence, and at the in between the lower premolars. Moving on to flap designs in separately. Okay, first moving with the triangular flap. So triangular flap, when you can see the design itself is a triangular. Okay, triangular form of design. In the second picture you can see the raised triangular flap, where you are having a one incision, that is one vertical incision, and the other incisions where it is raised. Okay, so it is described by Fisher in 1940. It is formed by giving 2 incisions. Okay, only 2 incisions, that is one horizontal and one vertical. You can see in the right hand side of the second picture, one direct incision, that is vertical incision given, and the other one is intracellular incision. Okay, nowadays this intracellular incision is also given along with these 2 incisions. So the incisions which are made of for the triangular flap are one horizontal and vertical. Nowadays intracellular incision is also given. The advantages are it has enhanced rapid wound healing, ease of wound closure is there. Disadvantage is that it has limited surgical access. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages. Now triangular flap is not recommended. It is not recommended for teeth with long root, that is for the maxillary canine. Okay, always for the maxillary canine this triangular flap is not recommended, and also for the mandibular anteriors because of the lingual inclination of the roots. So in those 2 cases, this indication of the flap is, flap is contraindicated. Okay, so greater access in an apical direction, especially in the posterior aspect of the mouth, can be obtained using this flap. Second flap design is rectangular flap. As you can see, the name itself says that it is rectangular in shape. Okay, so this is obtained by giving 2 vertical incision and 1 horizontal incision. Okay, and nowadays the intracellular incision is also been added in this design. So 2 vertical incision with 1 horizontal incision is the rectangular flap. So previously it was triangular flap where there is only 1 vertical and 1 horizontal incision. Okay, in this 2 vertical incisions have been given to a 1 horizontal incision. The advantages are access is enhanced and easier apical orientation is got. Okay, and the disadvantage is that wound closure as flap reapproximation and post-surgical stabilization are more difficult than the triangular flap. Potential for flap dislodgement, that is greater in these cases. Mainly indicated for 1 tooth anterior and 1 tooth posterior cases. That means mainly for the canine regions. Okay, so this flap is not recommended for mandibular posterior teeth. mainly indicated for mandibular anteriors, maxillary canines, multiple teeth involvements, and it is not always recommended for mandibular posterior teeth. So mainly for the anterior purpose, it is recommended the rectangular flap. Third one is trapezoidal flap. As you can see in the picture, it is a trapezoidal design. Okay, so it was described by Newman and Aiken in 1940. The trapezoidal flap is formed by two releasing incisions which join a horizontal intracircular incision, okay, at the obtuse angle. So it is at an obtuse angle. That is an important point. At an obtuse angle, okay. So two releasing incisions have placed which join in a horizontal intracircular incision. The disadvantage of this is that the wound healing by secondary intention happens here, okay. So wound healing is by secondary intention, not by the primary intention. Pocketing or clefting of the soft tissue can be seen. Compromise in blood supply can be seen, as well as it is contraindicated in periradicular surgery cases. So trapezoidal is least preferred flap. I mean least preferred than the triangular as well as the horizontal or rectangular flap designs. Next one is sulcular flap. Okay, sulcular flap is for the edentulous regions at the crest of the ridge for the removal of a mandibular torus. Okay, for the removal of the torus, it is mainly indicated. So sulcular flap is not ideally used nowadays. It is an envelope or sulcular flap which has two teeth anteriorly and one teeth posteriorly. Okay, so this involves two teeth anteriorly and one teeth posteriorly mainly to the premolar region. So whenever there is an indication to the premolar region, this flap is preferred, but it does not give proper access and properly handling of the areas. So this is not preferred nowadays. So it is not used only nowadays. Okay, so it is not considered as a flap itself nowadays. So sulcular flap is like a waist flap. Next, about limited thickness flaps, that is, one is semi-lunar flap. Okay, in the picture you can say it is the semi-lunar flap which is reflected there in the first picture. Okay, first above picture. Below two pictures are there which is showing a diagrammatic representation in the first one, which is having a red arc shape of line. Okay, that is the shape of the flap. So to approach the root apex, to avoid the trauma to the papillae and gingival margin, useful for periapical surgery of a limited extent, and should not cross major prominences like canine eminences. In those cases, this semi-lunar incision is preferred. Now this was given by Parsh, also known as Parsh incision. Okay, so Parsh was the person who introduced this flap, semi-lunar flap, hence it is known as Parsh incision. Now it is formed by a single curved incision. This is a single curved incision. Flap is called semi-lunar flap because horizontal incision is modified to have a dip towards the incisal aspect in the center of the flap, which is giving the resemblance to the half moon. Okay, so half moon shape it is, so it is called a semi-lunar. This flap has no primary advantages and it is not preferred in modern endodontic practice because of its numerous disadvantages. So the disadvantages are limited surgical access, difficult wound closure, poor apical orientation, potential for post-surgical soft tissue defects by incising through the tissue unsupported by the bone, and maximum disruption of the blood supply to an unflapped tissue. Okay, these are the so many disadvantages, and it is not preferred in the modern endodontic practice. So which is not preferred in the modern endodontic practice is semi-lunar flap, which is also known as Parsh incision. Next one in the limited thickness flap is that Lübke ocean bean. Okay, Lübke ocean bean. It is a scalloped horizontal incision in attached gingiva, and two vertical releasing incisions are given to form this Lübke ocean bean flap. Okay, you can see in the picture it is not attached to the tooth surface or near to the tooth. Okay, it is always at a different level to the tooth or at an distance to the tooth surface. So it must be in the adequate there must be adequate attached gingiva, that is 3 to 5 mm of attached gingiva must be there for this flap. So scalloped horizontal incision is given in the attached gingiva. That is an important point in this, with the two vertical incisions. Now best for the epithelial wound closure. This is best for the epithelial wound closures. So Lübke ocean bean flap is also known as submarginal rattan flap. Okay, rattan flap. In 1926, the Newman described a surgical technique for management of the periodontal disease, which is very much similar to this flap. Okay, so Newman in 1926, he described this flap, that is a modification of the rectangular flap. Flap design, this is the scalloped horizontal incision is given in the attached gingiva, which forms two vertical incisions made on each side of the surgical site. Okay, so this flap is developed by an endodontic and the endodontist and a periodontist. So this flap gives an advantage of vertical flap along with the semilunar flap. Indications are in the presence of gingivitis or periodontitis, which is associated with the fixed processes and where bony dehiscence is suspected. Okay, so whenever there is bony dehiscence, this flap can be preferred. So in the picture you can see at a distance to the tooth in the marginal gingiva there is a flap reflected. Okay, so the disadvantages are disruption of the blood supply to unflapped tissue, flap shrinkage, difficult flap reapproximation and wound closure, untoward post-surgical sequelae, healing with scar formation, limited apical orientation and limited or no use in the mandibular surgery. Advantages are marginal and interdental gingiva are not involved, unaltered soft tissue attachment level, crustal bone is not exposed, adequate surgical access is obtained and good wound healing potential is there as compared to the semilunar flap. So that was about all the flap designs. Now moving on to apicectomy. Apicectomy is also known as apicoectomy or root end resection. Okay, root end resection, that means that the end of the root is cut. Okay, so it is the ablation of the apical portion of the root end which is with attached soft tissues. Okay, root end attached soft tissues. The current indications of the root resection. Okay, what are the indications of the apicectomy? That are inability to perform non-surgical endodontic therapy due to anatomical, pathological and iatrogenic defects in root canal, persistent infections after the conventional endodontic treatment, need for biopsy, need to evaluate the resected root surface for any additional canals or fractures, medical reasons, lack of time for removal of iatrogenic error like ledges, fractured instruments and perforation which are causing treatment failure, for evaluation of the apical seal as well as blockage of the root canal due to calcific metamorphosis or radicular restoration. So in these cases we can have the apicectomy procedure. In the picture here you can see in 1 mm, 2 mm, 3 mm. Okay, so here the frequency of canals found at different levels of the root canals have been shown. So at the apical end there will be so many ramifications or the canal divisions will be more and mostly seen up till the 3 mm length in the apex. Okay, so if we cut that apical ramifications or those root canal morphological aspects, if we cut out and throw that, then the difficulty or failure of the RCT will be less. So considering that, the apicectomy procedure is given importance because of this removal of the infected part. How we have to cut the root end? So the what should be the angle of the root end resection? Okay, there should be always an angulated cut. So earlier it was thought that the root end resection at 30 to 45 degree from long edges of the tooth which was better. Okay, so earlier it was thought that 30 to 45 angulation should be better or will be better, but recently it has been modified and a bevel of 0 to 10 degree is recommended with resection at the level of 3 mm. Okay, when we are cutting at the level of 3 mm, always the bevel of 0 to 10 degree is recommended recently. Beveling of root end results in opening of the dentinal tubules on the resected part which communicates with the root canal space and result in apical leakage. Okay, so the beveling of the root end which results in opening of the dentinal tubules on resected part and it communicates with the root canal space and results in apical leakage. Okay, so the beveling is shown here in the B picture where there can be leakage and the root end resection at 0 to 10 degree. That is why because of this leakage only the angulation or the beveling of the root end is minimized to 0 to 10 degree. Before it was 30 to 45 degree which caused much of the leakages. One more point we have to remember in this part is that bisection and bicuspidization. Bisection or bicuspidization, that is two similar words. It is also known as hemisection. Okay, hemisection. So bisection is defined as the surgical separation of the multi-rooted tooth into two halves and their respective roots. So in simple words, you can see in the picture it is given that says that one tooth is cut into two smaller tooth, that is one big multi-rooted tooth is cut into two smaller tooth. That is what it is called as bisection or bicuspidization or hemisection. Hemi means half. Okay, half section. So the indications are when periodontal disease involves furcation area and the therapy does not improve the condition. In such cases we have to cut the tooth. Percussion is transferred to make interproximal space, which makes more area or area more manageable by the patient. In such cases also we can opt for the bisection procedure. Okay, so these are the very important two indications. Periodontal disease involved in the furcation area and therapy does not improve the condition. One, and second one is furcation is transferred to make interproximal space, which makes area more manageable by the patient. So bisection, bicuspidization or hemisection. And the contraindications of this procedure are fused roots, whenever there is root fusion, lack of osseous support for separate segments. Okay, if we separate the segments, if there is lack of bone support, then we are not supposed to proceed with this procedure, and in cases of uncooperative patients we are not supposed to do this. Okay, in three contraindication, that is fused root, lack of bone support and uncooperative patient. So in the picture you can see here in the right hand section, okay, direction of the tooth section that is shown, where the multi-rooted tooth is cut into two halves and the crown has been placed or veneering has been done, whereby it looks like two separate small tooth. Okay, so this is what about hemisection is. So this completes endodontic surgery part, where I have been talking about all the flap designs, some points on the other aspects like apicectomy and hemisection. Okay, detail about all the flap designs, why it is important, why it is not important, and what are the things we should be taken care of, what are the principles for the flap designs and incisions, and all the indications and contraindications for the endodontic surgery procedures. Okay, so what all were covered for the MCQs, recently asked MCQs have been covered in this section. So far you have to read thoroughly, then attempt the questions. Thank you so much.